The evening bells of St. Anthony's Chapel rang through the peaceful streets of Maplewood, their melodious chimes echoing off the surrounding hills and spreading across the sleepy town like a gentle embrace. Reverend Thomas stood at the chapel's entrance, his weathered hands smoothing down his cassock as he watched the last rays of sunlight paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. The ancient stone building had been his home for the past 20 years, and every crack in its walls held a story of faith, hope, and redemption. Inside the chapel, the scent of burning candles and aged wood created an atmosphere of timeless sanctity. Thomas moved quietly through the empty pews, straightening hymnals and saying his evening prayers. His footsteps echoed softly against the stone floor, a familiar sound that had become as much a part of him as his own heartbeat. The stained glass windows cast ethereal patterns on the floor, their colors growing deeper as twilight settled over Maplewood. The Reverend's reputation for kindness and wisdom had spread far beyond the town's borders. People would travel for hours just to seek his counsel, drawn by stories of his patient understanding and unwavering faith. Yet Thomas remained humble, believing that his greatest calling was simply to listen and offer comfort to those in need. The chapel's doors remained open to all, regardless of their past or circumstances. As night fell, Thomas prepared for his final tasks before retiring. The golden candlestick that had graced the altar for generations caught his eye, its polished surface reflecting the flickering flames around it. This precious artifact had been passed down through the years, each scratch and dent telling its own story of service to the community. Little did he know that this cherished piece would soon become the catalyst for an extraordinary journey of transformation. The peaceful routine of that evening was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected sound, footsteps that didn't belong to the usual evening visitors. Thomas paused in his work, his attention drawn to the shadows near the altar. The atmosphere in the chapel shifted, charged with an unfamiliar tension that made the air feel heavy. Someone was there, moving with the hesitation of a person caught between desperation and conscience. As Thomas watched, a figure emerged from the darkness, their movements betraying an inner conflict that spoke louder than words. The stranger's eyes darted between the golden candlestick and the chapel's exit, hands trembling with what could have been fear, shame, or both. In that moment, Thomas faced a choice that would set in motion events beyond anything he could have imagined. Instead of calling out or rushing to protect the church's treasures, Thomas remained still, his heart filled with an unexpected compassion for this troubled soul. He could sense the desperation radiating from the stranger, and something told him that this moment was about much more than a simple theft. As the figure retreated into the shadows with the candlestick, Thomas closed his eyes and began to pray, not for the return of the object, but for the salvation of the person who felt compelled to take it. The days following the disappearance of the golden candlestick brought subtle changes to St. Anthony's Chapel. Thomas noticed them first in the quality of light that filtered through the windows each morning, somehow different, as if the very atmosphere of the sacred space had shifted. But it wasn't just the air that had changed. Mysterious signs began appearing throughout the church, like breadcrumbs leading toward an unknown destination. One morning, while preparing for early mass, Thomas discovered an unfamiliar brass key resting on the altar. Its antique design suggested it belonged to the church, yet he had never seen it before in all his years of service. Next to it lay a carefully folded note, the paper worn as if it had been handled many times before being placed there. The message inside, written in shaky handwriting, contained just 3 words: "I am sorry." The appearance of these items marked the beginning of what Thomas would later recognize as a spiritual awakening. Small amounts of money started appearing in the collection box, always wrapped in the same type of paper as the note. Sometimes the offerings came with tiny scrolls containing fragments of prayers or confessions, each one revealing another layer of the troubled soul seeking forgiveness. Members of the congregation began whispering about strange occurrences, fresh flowers mysteriously appearing on the steps each morning, windows found cleaned without explanation, and the garden suddenly showing signs of careful tending. Thomas watched as these acts of anonymous service transformed the church's atmosphere, creating an undercurrent of anticipation among the faithful. During his sermons, Thomas noticed a shadow that would appear at the back of the church, barely visible in the dim light. The figure never stayed for the entire service, but its presence became more frequent with each passing week. The Reverend crafted his homilies with extra care, weaving messages of hope and redemption into each word, knowing they might reach the ears of someone desperate for healing. The children of Maplewood were the first to speak of the mysterious stranger who tended the church grounds at dawn. They described someone who worked with careful devotion, speaking softly to the plants and treating every task as if it were a sacred duty. Their innocent observations painted a picture very different from what one might expect of someone who had taken from the church. In the confessional, Thomas began receiving cryptic messages that spoke of a burden too heavy to bear and a past too painful to face. The words revealed a soul trapped between the desire for redemption and the shame of past actions. Each message seemed to carry a weight that transcended the mere theft of a candlestick, hinting at deeper wounds that needed healing. As autumn painted the trees around St. Anthony's in brilliant colors, the evidence of this invisible presence grew stronger. The church grounds had never looked more beautiful, and there was a new energy in the air that even the most skeptical parishioners couldn't deny. Thomas kept every note, every small offering, creating a chronicle of this unusual journey toward redemption. He knew that somewhere in Maplewood, a battle was being fought in someone's heart, and the church had become its battlefield. The autumn winds brought change to Maplewood, rustling through the trees surrounding St. Anthony's Chapel with whispers of secrets yet to be revealed. Thomas spent more time in prayer than ever before, sensing that something profound was unfolding within the sacred walls of his beloved church. The mysterious presence that had been haunting the chapel grounds was growing bolder, leaving increasingly personal tokens of repentance. One particularly memorable morning, Thomas discovered a worn photograph tucked beneath the altar cloth. The image showed a woman standing proudly in front of St. Anthony's, her arms wrapped around a young boy with bright eyes and an infectious smile. The photograph's edges were creased and faded, suggesting years of being carried in someone's pocket. As Thomas studied the image, recognition slowly dawned. The woman had been a dedicated member of the congregation years ago, known for her beautiful voice in the choir and her unwavering faith despite life's hardships. The discovery of the photograph coincided with increasingly detailed letters appearing in the confessional. The writer spoke of a childhood spent in the shadow of St. Anthony's spire, of Sunday school lessons that had once filled their heart with hope, and of a mother's love that remained unblemished by time. The words painted a picture of a life that had somehow veered off course, like a ship lost in a storm, searching desperately for its way back to harbor. During this time, the townsfolk of Maplewood began sharing their own encounters with the mysterious stranger. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the local bakery, spoke of finding her delivery of day-old bread redistributed to the homeless shelter before she could even begin her morning routine. The shelter's director mentioned a quiet figure who would appear at dawn, helping to serve breakfast before disappearing into the morning mist. Thomas noticed that the unknown visitor had begun attending more of his services, though always remaining in the shadows at the back of the church. He could sense the internal struggle playing out in the soul of this person, the desire to step into the light warring with the shame that kept them hidden in darkness. Each sermon became a careful balance of encouragement and understanding, designed to bridge the gap between past mistakes and future redemption. The church's garden underwent a remarkable transformation during these weeks. What had once been a modest collection of flowers and shrubs bloomed into a masterpiece of color and life. The careful attention paid to every plant spoke of someone seeking peace through service, of hands trying to create beauty to balance out past transgressions. Children from the Sunday school began calling it the Angel's Garden, unaware of how close they might be to the truth about its caretaker. As winter approached, Thomas found himself drawn to the church archives, searching through old records and photographs. The image of the woman and child had awakened something in his memory, a connection he couldn't quite grasp but felt was crucial to understanding the full story. Among the dusty files, he discovered attendance records from years past, baptismal certificates, and countless photographs documenting the life of the church community. One evening, as Thomas sat in his study reviewing these materials, a paper slipped from between the pages of an old registry. It was a handwritten letter from the woman in the photograph, dated just before her departure from Maplewood. The contents of that letter would prove to be the key to understanding the mysterious presence that had been haunting St. Anthony's, though Thomas didn't yet realize how profoundly it would impact the lives of everyone involved. The letter Thomas discovered in the church archives revealed a story of hope, struggle, and unshakable faith. Written by Sarah Matthews, the woman from the photograph, it spoke of her dreams for her young son John and her prayers that he would always find his way back to St. Anthony's should he ever lose his path. The words seemed prophetic now, as Thomas pieced together the connection between past and present. The morning after finding the letter, Thomas arrived at the church earlier than usual. The sun had barely begun to paint the horizon when he spotted a figure tending to the frost-covered roses in the garden. Instead of retreating inside, Thomas chose to remain still, watching as the stranger worked with gentle, practiced movements. There was something familiar in the way the man carried himself, an echo of the bright-eyed boy from the photograph. Their first real interaction happened naturally, like the breaking of dawn. The stranger, startled by Thomas's presence, stood frozen among the roses. But instead of running away, he remained rooted to the spot, as if an invisible force held him there. Thomas approached slowly, holding Sarah's letter in his hand. The morning light revealed a face withered by hardship but bearing an unmistakable resemblance to both the boy in the photograph and his mother. "John Matthews," Thomas spoke softly, not as an accusation but as a welcome home. The name hung in the air between them, heavy with years of absence and regret. John's shoulders slumped, as if the weight of his identity had become too much to bear. Tears began to fall, creating small dark spots on the frost-covered ground beneath his feet. During the hours that followed, they talked in Thomas's study, the golden candlestick, returned weeks ago through an anonymous delivery, sitting between them on the desk. John shared his story, the years of struggle after leaving Maplewood, the ways he had tried to outrun his past, and the moment of desperate weakness that had brought him back to St. Anthony's that fateful night. The transformation that had begun in secret now continued in the open. John's work in the church garden expanded to include repairs around the building, his skilled hands healing the chapel as his soul found its own restoration. The congregation, initially wary, watched as this quiet man devoted himself to serving the community that his mother had loved so dearly. Thomas observed with joy as John's natural gifts emerged. His gentle way with the children who visited the garden led to him teaching them about plants and nature. His careful restoration of the church's wooden fixtures revealed an artistry that had laid dormant for years. Each day brought new signs of the person John was meant to be, emerging from beneath the shadows of his past. Word spread through Maplewood about the prodigal son who had returned to St. Anthony's. The story touched hearts and opened minds, reminding everyone that transformation was possible for anyone willing to take the first step toward change. John's presence in the church became a testament to the power of faith, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bonds of community. As winter settled over Maplewood, the garden John tended continued to bloom against all odds, much like his own spirit. The roses he cared for so tenderly produced unexpected winter blooms, their vibrant colors standing in defiance of the frost. It seemed to Thomas that every petal and leaf was a small miracle, a reflection of the greater miracle of transformation taking place within the church walls. The transformation of St. Anthony's Chapel under John's care became a symbol of hope for the entire community of Maplewood. As winter gave way to spring, the church grounds flourished with new life, reflecting the remarkable change in the man who tended them. John's daily presence had become as natural as the morning sun, his quiet dedication touching lives in ways that reached far beyond the chapel walls. The decision to share his story with the entire congregation came gradually, like the blooming of his beloved roses. It happened during a special evening service, with the setting sun casting long shadows through the stained glass windows. The chapel was filled to capacity, drawn by whispers of a special announcement. Thomas stood at the pulpit, his heart full as he introduced John to the assembled crowd. With trembling hands but unwavering resolve, John faced his community. His voice, initially soft and uncertain, grew stronger as he shared his journey, from the happy child who once sang in the choir to the lost soul who had returned on that fateful night. He spoke of his mother's enduring faith, of the shame that had driven him to desperate acts, and of the unconditional acceptance that had led him back to the light. As John spoke, something extraordinary happened within the chapel. The atmosphere shifted, filled with a profound sense of understanding and compassion. Many in the congregation remembered Sarah Matthews, recalled her beautiful voice and unwavering spirit. They saw in John's face not just the features of his mother, but the same determination to overcome life's challenges that she had shown during her time in Maplewood. The revelation of his identity and the honest account of his struggles touched hearts in unexpected ways. Mrs. Henderson, who had witnessed his early morning acts of kindness at the bakery, stood up and shared how John's anonymous generosity had inspired her to start a weekly bread donation program for the homeless shelter. The children from his gardening lessons spoke eagerly about the gentle man who taught them to nurture living things and find beauty in the smallest details of creation. Other stories emerged, tales of quiet assistance, of burdens lightened, of hope restored. Each account added another layer to the tapestry of John's transformation. The candlestick, now restored to its place of honor on the altar, gleamed in the evening light, no longer a symbol of transgression but a testament to the power of redemption. That evening marked a turning point for St. Anthony's Chapel. The congregation, moved by John's courage and humility, embraced him not as someone seeking forgiveness, but as a vital part of their community. His story became a source of inspiration, proving that it's never too late to begin anew, that even the deepest wounds can heal when met with love and understanding. In the weeks that followed, John's role in the church expanded naturally. He established a mentoring program for troubled youth, sharing his experiences and teaching them the therapeutic value of working with their hands. The garden became a sanctuary for healing, where people could find peace among the blooms and share their own stories of struggle and hope. The chapel, under the combined guidance of Thomas and John, grew into something more than just a place of worship. It became a beacon of transformation for all who sought a fresh start. 1 year after John's emotional confession to the congregation, St. Anthony's Chapel hosted a special anniversary celebration. The event wasn't just about marking time, it was a testament to the profound impact one person's journey could have on an entire community. The chapel grounds, more beautiful than ever under John's constant care, buzzed with activity as people gathered to share in the celebration. The transformation that had begun with a desperate act in the dark had blossomed into something extraordinary. John's mentoring program had grown beyond anyone's expectations, touching lives far beyond Maplewood's borders. Young people who had once felt lost and alone found purpose in tending the garden, learning trades, and discovering their own paths to redemption. The chapel's restoration projects, led by John's skilled hands, had preserved not just the building structure but its spirit as a sanctuary for all who sought healing. Thomas watched with quiet joy as John led a group of visitors through the garden, sharing stories about each carefully tended plant and the lessons they held. The Reverend remembered the shadowy figure who had once haunted these grounds, comparing that memory to the confident, compassionate man before him now. The transformation went deeper than mere appearance. It radiated from within, touching everyone who crossed his path. The celebration featured a special exhibition of photographs documenting the chapel's history, including the precious image of young John and his mother that had helped bridge the gap between past and present. Alongside it hung new photographs showing the garden's transformation, the mentoring programs, and the countless lives touched by John's ministry of restoration. The display told a story of hope that transcended individual experience, becoming part of the chapel's lasting legacy. In a quiet moment during the festivities, John found himself standing before the golden candlestick that had once represented his greatest shame. Now restored and gleaming, it stood as a symbol of transformation, a reminder that even our darkest moments can lead to light. He thought of his mother, imagining how proud she would be to see her prayers for her son answered in such unexpected and beautiful ways. The evening culminated in a service where Thomas and John together shared their vision for the future of St. Anthony's. They spoke of expanding the mentoring program, creating more opportunities for healing and growth, and continuing to build a community where everyone could find acceptance and purpose. The chapel had become more than just a house of worship. It was a living testament to the power of faith, forgiveness, and second chances. As the celebration drew to a close, the setting sun painted the chapel in hues of gold and purple, much like it had on that fateful night when John first returned. But now, instead of shadows and shame, the light revealed a community united in purpose, forever changed by one man's journey from darkness to light. The story of St. Anthony's Chapel and its prodigal son had become a beacon of hope, proving that true transformation was possible for anyone brave enough to take the first step toward change. Dear viewers, the story of John and St. Anthony's Chapel reminds us that every life holds the potential for transformation. If this tale of redemption and renewal has touched your heart, we invite you to join our community of storytellers and believers. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that celebrate the triumph of the human spirit. Leave a comment sharing your own experiences of hope and transformation. Your story might be the light someone else needs to find their way home. Remember to like this video and click the notification bell to never miss another uplifting journey of faith and redemption. Together, we can create a tapestry of hope that touches lives around the world.